So if you consider compound sentences, it has at least two independent clauses that are joined by a comma, a semicolon, or a conjunction. So an independent clause can stand alone in a sentence. Would you like to discuss some examples of compound sentences?
Yes.
Okay. Let's say there are two separate sentences. For instance, let me give you the first example. So the first sentence could be, I like coffee. And the second sentence could be, Mary likes tea. If you were to convert both these sentences into one complete compound sentence, how would you do that? What can you do to merge both these sentences into one complete compound sentence?
You could put like or and also and nor.
Very good. Yes, you could add a fanboy here. Or you could add and here, you could add a conjunction, you could make use of and as well. So let's say what you could say is, I like coffee, comma, and Mary likes tea.
Yes.
Okay, so what we've done here is we've made use of a comma, and we've also made use of and to combine both these sentences into one complete compound sentence. So they're both independent clauses. If you consider this part of the sentence, which is the first part, I like coffee, it can stand on its own. It doesn't need, so it's not an incomplete thought. It doesn't need support from the second part of the sentence. Similarly, the second part of the sentence, Mary likes tea, can stand on its own. It is a complete thought. It doesn't require any support from the first part of the sentence.
Okay.
So this sentence would classify as a compound sentence because it has two independent clauses that are combined together through the use of a comma and a conjunction.
Okay.
All right. Would you like to look into another example?
Okay.
All right. Let's look into the second example. So let's say that there are two separate sentences, like Mary. Okay. Mary went to work. There's a second sentence that is John went to the party. And let's add one more sentence. I went home. So if you were to combine all three of these sentences into one complete sentence, uh, how would you do that?
You could say Mary went to work, and John went to the party, and I went home.
Right, so do you think you can add a comma or a semicolon? Do you think you can add a coordinating conjunction?
What's a subordinating conjunction?
So we can look into the acronym that you should know for conjunctions. It's called fanboys. So you can make use of the conjunctions very easily if you know the acronym. We can look into that. Let me just give you an idea right now. So let me give you an idea of how we can combine all three of these sentences into one complete sentence, and then we'll discuss the acronym for conjunctions.
Okay.
So Mary went to work, comma. So we're adding a comma so that we can combine the first sentence with the second sentence. But is a conjunction. But John went to the party, comma, and I went home. Let me just mark right here. So but and are both conjunctions. We've made use of these conjunctions in order to combine these three sentences into one complete sentence. We've also made use of commas in order to connect the independent clauses with the second and the third independent clause.
Okay.
So Mary went to work is an independent clause because it can stand on its own. it isn't dependent on any other part of the sentence.
But John went to the party. It doesn't make sense on its own, right?
So John went to the party does. We're making use of but to combine this independent clause, which is John went to the party, with Mary went to work, which is the first independent clause.
Okay.
So let's give you a better idea of the conjunctions. So have you heard of this acronym?
Yes.
Okay. So can
I've
you
heard
tell
of
me
that.
what F stands for?
For?
Very good. Yes, that's right. What about A?
And?
That's right. And what about N?
Nor?
Very good. And what about B?
But?
That's right. And can you tell me what O stands for?
Or?
Yes, that's right. What does Y stand for?
Yet?
Very good. And what does S stand for?
So?
That's right. So these conjunctions, these are known as coordinating conjunctions or connecting words. These words help combine one independent clause with another independent clause. They help establish a connection between two independent clauses, two or more than two independent clauses.
And so does independent clause means it can make sense on its own, and dependent means it can't make sense on its own.
Yes, let's discuss that together. So an independent clause, as mentioned earlier, can stand alone in a sentence. So that means it represents a complete thought. So if you consider this sentence right here, I like coffee, it represents a complete thought. It's not an incomplete sentence. The idea that the writer is trying to convey through the sentence is accurately portrayed.
Okay.
But if you consider a dependent clause, right? So how do you think it would be different from an independent clause?
It won't make sense on its own. Like, for example, and I went home. You need you need a more detailed and like a whole sentence to describe and I went home, so it can make sense.
Very good. Yes, that's right. So a dependent clause contains a subject and a verb, but it does not express a complete thought. So it's not it needs to be combined with another part, combined it in order to, it cannot stand on its own as a sentence.
Okay.
Let me give you an example of how, so that you can get a better idea. I'm just going to zoom out and then zoom back in. Okay, so I'm just going to discuss an example with you. Let's say you have a sentence that is, Damien won't be able to play in the game because he injured his foot. Can you identify the subject in this sentence?
Should I identify the dependent clause?
Okay, so you can start by identifying the subject and the verb, and then we can look into what the dependent clause is. So what do you think is the subject in this sentence?
That Damien won't be able to play in the game because he has injured his foot.
So he is the subject, right? And over here, so he is a reference to Damien, who is the subject of this, which is the subject of the sentence. And in this case, the verb is injured. So injured is the verb in the sentence. So this part of the sentence, Damien won't be able to play in the game. It's a complete sentence, right? Even if you don't state the reason, you can just consider this part of the text, sentence as a sentence that conveys a complete thought because it has a subject and it has a verb. But if you consider this part of the text, the sentence, right, because he injured his foot. So he is the subject, injured is the verb, but if you separate this from the first part of the sentence, if you just write, because he injured his foot, do you think that makes sense?
No.
So it doesn't convey the thought effectively. We don't know who is he. We don't know who, and we don't know what happened. And we don't know, so there's no pretext. There needs to be a context to the sentence, and that context is missing. So
Yes.
But once you combine this with this part of the sentence, so this is why this is part of the sentence is the dependent clause. And once you combine it with the first part of the sentence, the injury now has context. We now know why the injury is significant. Why does it matter?
Okay.
All right, so I hope that you are clear with on this example. Would you like me to give you some more examples?
Okay.